10 seconds.
Story here.
I have never been there.
Good afternoon. Ready to call the order for our July 11th Water Development District meeting. So the first thing on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. The President of the State, please.
Never seen such a thing.
Sounds dangerous.
No, very safe.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Yeah, that sounds like an accent.
Thank you. Second item on the agenda is the roll call of our members.
Okay, roll call for July 11th, 2023. Code.
Here.
Bierke.
Here.
Driscoll.
Here.
McGregor.
Here.
Ackerman.
Here.
Rowe.
Here.
Mack.
Here.
Fleming.
Here.
Kerr.
Here.
We have 9 directors all present. We have a quorum.
Thank you very much. The next item is the approval of today's agenda. Is there any items that we need to add to the agenda today? If not,
Move to approve.
moved by Driscoll for approval. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Seconded by Cheryl. 3 of you at once. All in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. The next item is the approval of the minutes from the May meeting. Are there any corrections, additions to the minutes from the May meeting?
Move to approve.
Moved by Driscoll for approval. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Robert. All in favor of the motion, or discussion on the motion? All in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item number 5 is conflict of interest disclosure. Are there any items on today's agenda that any of the board members would have a conflict of interest? Say so now. Seeing none, we'll move on to the next item, which is the treasurer's report. Dan?
Currently in CD, our cash, including our CDs and checking, is $703,878. Expenditures, non-project expenditures to date are $23,035. Project expenditures to date are $76,270, which gives us a total expenditure of $99,305 to date. We, by the way, we budgeted let's see, the remaining in our budget for the year is $163,860. And then going to projects, I have all the projects itemized there with the amount that we've granted and how much has been paid. And if you sum up everything that we're liable for, that's $264,272. And some of this will come up when we get to the budget discussion. So we've been getting regular invoices on Raider Park is one thing that's been coming in 2 or 3 a week usually. Some of the big ones, a couple of the big ones are the Green Valley, which is $125,000, none of which has been paid out, and the Conservation District, which is $50,000, none of which has been paid out. And those will come up again when we get to the budget discussion. So I did something a little different here. I put all the projects into a Gantt chart here so you can kind of see the timeline of different things. It's a little bit hard to read, but each of the lines is a year on the top, so you can kind of see here how, over what period of the time the projects have spanned. The red ones are closed out. I put those on there for reference, so I won't dwell on that too much unless anybody has any questions there. So, we have, I guess I should have mentioned, we currently have 3 CDs with Raymond James. And the principal on 2 of them, I guess we have 4. Well, let's see here. The principal on 2 of them is $126,000. On another one, it's $246,000. And then the way they had to split them up to keep them under the $50,000 mark, we have this smaller one for $10,000. And then the checking, savings and checking is about $195,000. Projected tax revenue this year will be $242,443 based on our requested levy. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Those 2 CDs, those 126 ones, I see they're coming due on August 23rd. Is that correct?
Yes, so we will have to
So next meeting we'll
deal
have to.
with that, yeah.
Okay. Is there any questions for Dan on the treasurer's report? Is there a motion for approval?
Move to approve.
Moved by Ron, seconded by Tom. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, all in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Pull the same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, item number 7 is the PFAS contamination update from Rita Krebs. Is that you? Oh, okay.
You want me to come up?
Yeah, if you could come up next to one of our microphones so we can get you on record.
Yeah, perfect.
And I have some handouts for the, are you called board members or district representatives?
Yeah, we're board members.
Board members? Okay.
Yeah, there's 9 of us, plus our administrator too would like a copy, I'm sure. If you got enough for anybody in the audience too, that'd be great. Thank you.
I don't have enough for the audience, but we can post them on our website.
Okay.
Most of the audience,
You
I've skimmed it already.
Oh, here's one you could give to, because I do know we have some guests here that are interested in your presentation.
Sure. Okay.
That actually is on our website too, by the way.
Okay. Good.
Can you hear me okay? I know I have a small voice, so I want to make sure the people in the back can hear me. So, okay. Well, thank you for the invitation to come here to brief you today. I looked at our records, and it looks like my predecessor last briefed this group in 2018.
Sounds about right.
And at that time, we had not completed our off-base well survey event. We were in phase 2 or 3 when she briefed you, and we had to do 5 rounds of data to complete that effort. So I'm glad that I'm here to give you an update after 5 years.
Thank you.
Next slide, please. So I'm here today to provide an overview of our off-base PFAS impacts to drinking water, the actions we've taken so far, and the actions we hope to complete in the future. Next slide. So I'll be going through background, basically what is PFAS, why we're here, what we've completed before we did the off-base drinking water well survey, where we have impacts, what we've done to mitigate those impacts, and then how we communicate to the public. Next slide. So background, and I apologize if this is all old news to people, but it never hurts to give us an update of where we're at, the background of why we're here. So PFAS are man-made chemicals. They're in just about everything when you look into it. They're in nonstick cookware, like old Teflon pans, stain-resistant carpet and fabric, anything called Scotch Guard, a lot of food packaging, although it is getting phased out now, which is good news. The reason that it affects the Air Force is that it was in firefighting foam. And basically in 1970, the Air Force started using this foam because it was a great way to put out petroleum fires. The Navy developed it to put out fires on naval ships. We used it up until 2016, basically. And one of the things they tell you is if you're going to use this stuff, you've got to train with it a lot. And the Air Force did a lot of training with it. So in 2016, the EPA issued lifetime health advisories for PFAS and PFOA, 2 of the thousands of PFAS chemicals. That same year, we discontinued the use of the old firefighting foam that contained PFAS. Next slide. So in 2015, we did a record search basically to find out everywhere on base where we spilled this, stored it, used it, those areas, there's 12 of them, they're all in pink on there. It was used everywhere. Some of those places are aircraft fires where the fire was put out using the foam. A couple places are, that didn't work. The old fire training area. But yeah, we used it a lot of different places. In 2019, we did a site inspection. We completed the site inspection where we took samples at all of these places to see if we had PFAS in surface water, soil, groundwater, sediment. It was everywhere. It looked like it was, and at that point it looked like it was flowing off base. So we started a off-base drinking water well survey in 2018. We were starting to get data in 2018, so we did our off-base survey at that time. Now in 2020, we began our remedial investigation. It's really a detailed study of where the hot spots are on base and off base so we can focus cleanup efforts. Next slide, please. So one more part of the background before I start talking about the off-base people that we've impacted. On-base water is not impacted. We get our water from Rapid City. We've tested it many times as well, and there aren't any impacts to base water. The city of Box Elder is also not impacted. They get their water from deep Madison Aquifer wells. They have tested it as well. So we're not talking about impacts to base water or city of Box Elder water. We're really talking about the folks that are outside of city limits that have their own private shallow wells. Next slide. So we started an off-base survey in 2018, and it took us 5 phases to complete it. We were not prepared for how far this went off base. And as you see, each phase got bigger and bigger, and the last one we finally decided to go all the way to the Cheyenne River. We sampled 117 drinking water wells. We also sampled a lot of wells that are not used for drinking water, but are used for irrigation. And when we say irrigation, we mean they're used for cattle or watering shelter belts or gardens, anything that's really not used for drinking water. Next slide. And so what we found was we had 23 off-base drinking water wells that have been impacted by PFAS and PFOA above those 2016 EPA limits. So we divided those areas and we named them areas A, B, C, D, and E. Really because we wanted to group them into areas where we could really have a strategy for mitigating that impact. Like Area A is southwest of the base. They're really close to Box Elder, pretty close to Rapid City limits as well. Area B is also close to Box Elder city limits, but on the southeast corner. Area C is close to Sunset Ranch that has a water system. Area E is close to the city of New Underwood. And then Area D is 18 miles out. They're not close to anything, but they do have a big property. It's a big ranch. So that basically helped us decide what to do to mitigate those impacts. And I guess I should say, well, next slide. I think it's on there. When we get the data from the lab, we start bottled water as soon as we can. Our goal is 48 hours. After that point, we look to do something else that's not as invasive. It's invasive to get bottled water every week. And then you have extra plastic to get rid of. It's just a pain. So if we can connect them to a city system, that's our first thing that we'll do. There were 6 properties that so 2 properties were close to the base. We connected them to the base water supply. 4 were close to the city of Box Elder. We connected them to the city of Box Elder. The rest of them got treatment systems. So we installed 20 household treatment systems, and that's a picture of one that we installed. And then we installed a large treatment system at a mobile home park. So, and at the same time, we also had a quarterly sampling program. So if somebody's results were not above the EPA limits, but they were close, we put them into a quarterly sampling program where we would sample them to make sure that they didn't end up going up above. And that happened several times. And we still have 1 person in that program right now. Next slide. This is the large treatment system I was telling you about at a mobile home park. They have around 70 trailer parks there, but they have the capacity of 102 trailer houses on their park. Next slide. So once we get past I would call those intermediate measures of trying to get people off bottled water but giving them a treatment system, then we looked at, well, that's still inconvenient. The Air Force has to come to their property twice a year and make sure the treatment system is working properly. So we started looking at building a water line to those folks. We went through many phases of this to try to find the right solution. We talked to the city of Box Elder separately, Rapid City separately. We had a plan. That didn't work out. So then recently we met with Pennington County, Box Elder, Rapid City, and the South Dakota Ellsworth Development Authority, and we all hammered out a solution that we agreed to in principle. We call it our handshake agreement. We're still working on the details and the written agreements. But basically that's what is shown on this map here. So our plan is for the Air Force to provide funding. The South Dakota Ellsworth Development Authority will build the system, and then Rapid City will take ownership of the first about a mile of the water line up until Elkvale Road, and then they will provide the water for the system. Box Elder will take the ownership of the rest of the line. They'll operate the system, and we're still, we're finalizing the plan for the design for that. And we hope to get that agreement with Sedita signed in late August. They want to put this out for bid in August and get some costs back And by that time, hopefully, we'll have agreements with the cities as well. Once that line is built, we'll connect the people, and then we will take away the treatment systems. And the plan that Sedita has worked out is those people will not have to pay a water bill for 20 years unless they transfer the property. And that was a sticking point when we talked to people, when we just said, well, we're just going to give the city of Box Elder money to plus up their system, and then we're just going to connect you and then walk away. You'll have to pay your water bill, and you'll also have to get annexed into the city. And a lot of people told us they didn't want to do that for many reasons, and they were good reasons. Like, in the city, you can't have as many animals, and there are so many things you can't do. You have more property taxes you have to pay. And then paying a water bill doesn't seem right either if you've not had to pay a water bill. So that wasn't something that our impacted people were willing to do. So this is, it's not giving them free water forever, but they won't have a water bill for 20 years. So, are there any questions on this before we move on? Or do you all wait for questions at the end?
If there's questions now, people can ask questions. So this new water line is already designed, is what you're saying?
It's almost 100% designed.
So you're ready to go to bid on it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Next month that'll happen.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Box Elder is going to explode with a bunch of people here pretty soon, and you got the water necessary for the 3,000 plus their families that are armed and are coming by 2025.
Yeah, I know the base has plenty of water. And I'm not sure about the city of Box Elder. Really, all I can speak to here is our impacted people. But I do know that the way we're designing the system is for extra water to come through that line, because that's a way that Rapid City and Box Elder can be connected another way. And that's a way that maybe Rapid City and Ellsworth can be connected another way as well. Now, we're only designing this system really for the impacted people, but I hope it helps those other, because we want to regionalize the system, right? The whole area, and this is a good way to do that. It looked like Nancy had a question.
Nancy Maynard, you're saying we're going to get water for 20 years? Box Elder said they would only do 10. Is there something we don't know?
I want to say this is really something that South Dakota Ellsworth Development Authority is working on, because honestly, the Air Force, we can't pay people's water bills. It's just not, by law, we can't do that. But Sedita has arranged this with the city of Rapid City. Rapid City is going to provide the water because they're going to get a really nice piece of infrastructure that'll help them in that area. That's what I understand. Now, it hasn't been signed yet, but that was part of our handshake agreement.
And we're not going to have to be annexed into the city?
No.
Okay, when they start using the easements, if there's already a utility easement, do they have to do another one, or can they use that utility?
I cannot answer any of that.
Okay. Okay,
Sorry.
thank you.
Anybody else?
Dan's got a question.
Oh, yeah.
Thanks, Rita.
Sorry.
A question on the scope of the problem on the map. You showed all along the Cheyenne, or all along the creek down to Cheyenne, that is an area that you're testing. I assume that's just the creek you're testing, or are there wells?
That's a great question.
Near the creek.
If you would go back a few slides, I can maybe talk to that. So, that one. It looks like Box Elder Creek is impacted all the way to the Cheyenne River, the surface water in Box Elder Creek. And we don't have specifics yet, but we're working on sampling. We've sampled so much already along there, and we're doing more right now. We want to see how far away from the creek a well can be without being impacted. So how far away from the creek is the groundwater impacted? We don't know yet. Before we started this, I would just say a couple 100 feet at max. But it's really complicated. In some places, Box Elder Creek is a losing stream. Some places it's a gaining stream. That changes with the time of the year as well, and if we're in a drought or not. So it's pretty complicated. But yeah, there are probably groundwater impacts all the way along there to the Cheyenne River. We've only really focused so far on drinking water, and that's why we have those areas in red shown on the map. Because so far that's been our focus, is drinking water.
Is the South Dakota Department of Ag and Natural Resources involved with this testing program?
They are, and the EPA as well.
Okay.
We have 2 meetings with them every 3 weeks, and we have more meetings than that as well. In fact, I came from one just now. Yeah, they're really involved, very involved.
And so this pipeline, the Air Force is paying for all of that?
Yes. Yep. Yep.
So along those same lines, if somebody lived close to the creek, could they request that they're from you guys?
Yes.
Their well be tested, okay.
Absolutely. We think we got everybody. We hope we got everybody. But we get calls here and there. Someone recently, in the last couple of years, built a house and put in a well. Once he put in the well, we sampled the water. It was good. And then we sampled it again once he put a pump in the well. We went back and sampled it again, and it was good. But you don't know until you sample. So if you hear of people along Box Elder Creek, between the base and Cheyenne River, let us know. And you can give them my number. Yes, sir.
Rita, if you guys know at this point you're going to have problems that far downstream, have you approached the state? Originally, the Minnewachuny project was supposed to come all the way to just outside Rapid, and they shut it off short. What's the chance of the state expanding that back to its original plan and bring it literally to where the area you say needs the water?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for right now, we focused on more cost-effective ways of mitigating the drinking water. Mr. Lassiter.
I was just going to ask if, I don't know if you have their information, but it'd probably be nice to get them connected to your newsletter so that they know when we have our town halls from even the county, because we've got posted 2 of them, and I expect that we're going to host another one again in March. So
Absolutely.
it would be wise for anybody who wants to keep up on that, because that's when we get some big updates.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Did you find any parallelism that you could use, if the Forest Service took responsibility for the ethylene dibromide contamination of many wells in the Nemo area, and have an ongoing arrangement to provide water for a similar principle anyway?
Okay.
Contaminated wells from ethylene dibromide. They took responsibility for providing water to those users. They drilled wells offsite for water.
Okay, that's what we hope to do. We're hoping that this works out. There's been a lot of adversity to get to this point. So what I hope by the end of August, September, we can say that we've got this water line underway. And that would alleviate, most of our impacted people are in Area A along here. That's where most of the population is that we've impacted. Yeah. And I guess you can go back to where we were, and I think I might have had a couple more slides. Yep. Yep, that's right. So I'll quickly talk about areas C, D, and E. Now, area C, like I mentioned, there are 3 impacted households in that area. It's pretty close to Sunset Ranch. We are in the process right now of connecting them to the Sunset Ranch water system. 2 of the people, the 3rd person did not agree to be connected. So we're not sure what's going to happen at that property yet. And then area D is the one I was telling you about. It's a really big ranch. We're hoping to install a replacement well far enough away from Box Elder Creek that's not contaminated. And we just installed a test well in May. and we conducted a drawdown test to see how big a well will have to be. There are three households on that property, so we need to provide enough water to them. So that's the plan there. And then Area E, the South Dakota Ellsworth Development Authority purchased that property, and the plan is to convert that property into wetlands to mitigate wetlands we've lost on base because of the construction work for the new B-21 bomber mission. When you take away wetlands, you have to replace them somewhere. So that's basically the plan for that property. Yeah.
You, on your map, you have it going the whole way to Cheyenne. Has there been testing down the Cheyenne?
Yes. We have tested upstream and downstream. Upstream, and don't quote me on these numbers, but upstream, there were some very low-level impacts. And I want to say they were 1 or 2 parts per trillion. So that's like one drop in like 20 Olympic-sized swimming pools. We're talking pretty low, but it's there. And then downstream, it was more like 3 or 4 parts per trillion, and that's the impact of what's coming out of Box Elder Creek. Because upstream of the confluence, Box Elder Creek, I want to say PFAS plus PFOA was like 150, 200 parts per trillion. And the standard is, right, the 2016 EPA standard is 70. So you wouldn't want to drink that water anyway because it's out of the creek, but it wouldn't be safe to drink. Yeah. So there are some really low-level impacts to the Cheyenne River. Next slide. And then our communication strategy right now is we have quarterly newsletters, and so if anybody here wants on our newsletter list, let me know, and I will put you on there. We mail it out to, I think the number is now 275 people, and we just released our last issue in June. The next one will be in September, and thanks to Mr. Lassiter, we attend town halls that he hosts where we update our community. And we've done that 2 years in a row. We've planned to do the next one in March, unless there's a reason to have one beforehand. That's the plan right now. And then we have an online administrative record where we put all of our documents that the public can go to. And the link is there, but all you have to do is Google search Air Force Administrative Record, and then you click on Ellsworth, and then you can look at all the documents that we have up there. All the newsletters are up there as well, all the past ones. So that's all I have. Are there any more questions?
I have one question on the pipeline. What's the estimated completion date for that?
We would love to connect people by the end of 2024.
Okay.
But we'll see if that works out. Yeah. Yes.
Was it only PFAS, or was there some jet fuel A involved too?
No. There are a couple places on base that we have impacts, but they're not even close to being off base. Yeah. Petroleum is nice because it doesn't go very far. PFAS goes everywhere, and nothing happens to it. It stays the same. You can't destroy it. It's really hard to anyway.
What kind of home systems are they putting in to mitigate that?
So if you can go back to those pictures, the ones we have in individual houses, and there are people in this room that have them. Basically, the little blue tank on the right is a filter. The bigger blue tank in the middle is it's an ion exchange system, kind of like what a water softener does. And then the big tank is a granulated activated carbon, so it's carbon. So we have 2 filters it goes through to make sure that we get all the PFAS out. And then on the next slide, this is the one at the mobile home park. It's kind of the same thing. There are actually 2 blue tanks on the right. Those are the same kind of, it's an ion exchange system. There's a resin in there that takes out the PFAS. And that's what that looks like.
And it takes
too.
it all out?
Yeah,
Okay.
it does. Now, we test it to make sure, because you're going to have to replace that stuff at some point. We test it to make sure that it's still working. So can you go back one slide again? Thank you. Like I said, there's a ion exchange system, and then there's the granulated activated carbon system. We will check to see if the first tank is working. If it isn't, the second tank will catch it. There's and then the same at the mobile home park, there are 2 tanks. So we want to sample the midpoint and then at the end where it's going to someone to drink. So we can catch it and figure out when to replace it. Yeah.
What do they do with the discharge from those systems?
So we basically have to, the spent resin, we
Yes.
have to dispose of it properly. It'll have to go to a hazardous waste landfill, basically.
Okay.
Yeah. It doesn't just go to the Rapid City landfill.
That was going to be my next
Yeah.
question.
Yes, Nancy.
How often do they change the resin tanks?
We've only had to do 1 so far. They've lasted a long time. At the mobile home park, we've only had to change that once. We thought we would have to change it sooner. So we're not looking at super high concentrations, which is good. Yeah.
And then you're coming out twice a year to inspect or to test the water on these?
Yes. Yeah, the last one was in June, and then the next one should be in December.
And then the blue water filter, the small water filter, how often are you coming out to change that?
So they're supposed to check the pressures because that's just, a pre-filter to get sediment. So they just check pressures and change it if needed. And I know we've had some problems
Yeah,
with them not checking yours.
true.
Yeah. So in that case, you had to tell us.
I have to tell you again.
Okay.
They called repeatedly, nobody called her back.
Okay.
The neighbor lady, Sandy.
Oh, so it's not yours, it's your tenant.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Mhm.
Okay.
She's called repeatedly.
Okay. Well, it didn't get to me, but I'll ask.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think she emailed and she has Mid-Continent,
Oh.
so it probably got blocked again, so.
We don't get any emails from Mid-Continent. Yeah. And I'm sorry, we've tried to fix it.
Yep, I know you did, yes.
So,
Dan, you have another question?
Yeah, so the people that have the mitigation installed, is that just for residential use? What about livestock? And same question for the 20-year free water, is that?
right now, we can only mitigate for people drinking it. If it's a cow drinking it, we can't do anything about it yet.
Is that dangerous for humans if a cow drinks?
Yeah, we don't know to what extent. The EPA has told us in the past, and Mr. Lassiter can probably back me up on this even more if I get this wrong. They've said, the beef itself should be okay, but don't use the bones for a broth. Like, don't boil the bones because it's going to be in the bone marrow, and don't eat the liver. If you're one of those people who eat the liver, because I grew up eating the liver, I don't anymore, but they say don't eat the organs. Is that what you understand?
That's correct. For cattle, and they're finding, or there's evidence out there that if you take cattle off of the impacted water, now they're not saying you can still eat the organs after this, but after about 14 to 21 days, there's no trace of it in the meat, as far as I'm understanding. So, but they're still recommending don't use the bones for broth, or any other thing that you're cooking it down for. Don't render the fat and the organs for cattle. Now, chickens is different. They still say don't eat the eggs if the chickens are eating it. I have a small farm ranch east of Norwood, so that's why I'm kind of very familiar with this. Trying to think what else about livestock. Oh, and there, there's stuff about gardens. Certain plants will take up more than other plants. So for me to tell you that right off the top of my head, I don't know what those are though.
Okay.
And I should add that milk, it's going to come in the milk. The PFAS is going to go right through into the milk. So I definitely wouldn't drink the milk if the cow's been drinking this water, unfortunately.
Okay, any more questions for Rita? If not, I appreciate you coming and giving us an update, and the folks that are concerned appreciate you coming to our meeting too and have some input on it. So
Thanks for the
maybe you
invitation.
can come back
Yeah.
in 6 months or a year or whatever
Sure.
and give us another update.
It would be great to have some nice things to say that we've completed at that point. Yeah.
Well, you've had a lot of press on it, and so I know there's a lot of people
Yes.
interested in what you're doing out there. So
Yes.
thanks again for
Thank
coming.
you.
Okay, moving along then. The next item is renew our insurance from Mr. Cole.
So we annually maintain, I think it's kind of analogous to a overall umbrella liability insurance. Is that a kind of a correct characterization of it?
Yes.
Okay. So we may or may not get an invoice prior to our August meeting, and so.
I did just get it.
Oh, got it.
And
Okay.
It's less than 2,000. I had it here. I don't know where it is, but it's $1,900 some dollars. So
Okay.
you can use that as the assumption here.
And so we've maintained that insurance at least as long as I've been aware of it, while I've been on the board. And so our administrator just wants to get a pre-authorization or an authorization now to go ahead and pay that bill to maintain that sort of general liability insurance for the board.
Is that a motion?
It is.
Okay, is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Seconded by Craig. Any discussion on the motion? If not, all in
Have we
favor?
looked at any
wait,
other
go ahead.
actual insurance in the last year since this came up?
Have we went out, you mean, and looked for somebody else?
Well, this isn't insurance we're buying. This is through the assurance policy where we're tied in with a bunch of other public entities to kind of a mutual protection society. This is not really insurance. So I wondered if we've looked at any other actual insurance policies.
I don't believe so. Have we?
No.
Not to my knowledge. Is that something, that's something we should be doing? or-
Well, I think it would be wise. The concerns as I expressed this came up the last time around, and,
Well,
In this program, as I understand it, everybody that's in the program that gets their coverage from this assurance group is potentially liable to kick in for claims against all other members or all other people covered by this. I mean, we are not just buying insurance and then if we have a claim, we submit it. This is a program where if one of the, as I understand it, and of course the guy, when he was going to come last year and talk to us about this, didn't show up for a conflict or whatever reason. But as I understand it, this is a program where everybody who gets coverage from it as an assurance society is potentially on the hook if one member ends up with a big claim that everybody else might have to kick in to cover it. This is not,
What is this?
the key
what-
point is that this is not insurance. This is a different product from actual insurance.
I'm going to look at the invoice and see, we may be able to take this up at the next meeting.
That's just what I was gonna ask, if we could investigate that in the next month.
And I can't think of that local insurance guy's name offhand that we go through. See if I can find that.
So essentially, it's a shared program that probably remains fairly stable. It could potentially go
Yeah,
up a
I
little
think,
some, but
I think the risk is pretty low, but we need to understand that the risk is there.
I think it's worth investigating if we could save money. I mean,
Well, when is our next meeting? This is due the 9th.
See, you can see that in the name of it, South Dakota Public Assurance Alliance. You know, it tells you right there that it's a collective group that has come together to provide coverage.
So I wonder who else is on that list? Who else is on that list?
I don't know.
That would be interesting to know.
So it is due before our next meeting.
I guess that's the question, is it due?
When is the 9th? I can't. I don't have a calendar. I can bring up.
Has anybody got a calendar?
When is the August?
I can take
ninth?
it.
It will be the 8th, is the
Is the
second
next
Tuesday,
meeting.
is the second
Oh,
Tuesday in August.
Okay, so they're
Yeah,
actually kind of forgiving on that too, but I would say we're probably okay if we want to defer this.
Is that okay with the rest of the board members? Wait till the next meeting? Anybody opposed to doing that, Dan?
Well, we did discuss this a year ago. I guess I would suggest rather than complicate it with the last day or hoping that it's okay to be a little late, I'd suggest we go ahead and pay it now, and that gives us a year to look into it. And
actually
you
look
seem to
into
be
it.
pretty familiar with.
That's what we did last year.
Well, what we need is someone that will say, okay, I will take it upon myself to look into this, but I see no particular risk in maintaining what we've got, and I guess-
Is that something, Dan, you could just do then, right, since it's right in front of us, to get an answer to that for our next meeting? Yeah, and, go ahead and pay for this coming year?
So you're saying pay this invoice and then work on researching it?
Yes.
I'll do whatever. I'll need a note, maybe.
Dan, do we have a policy of some sort from them?
Yeah, I don't have it with me. It may actually be this thing here. I didn't really, this is something that was attached and I didn't really look through it, but
Well, like I say, I think our risk is low. My concern is that we understand exactly what we're buying for
Yeah,
this.
I would agree, our risk is low.
You know, with the board's consent, I guess we go ahead and approve the motion, pay it, and I'll take it on as my personal commitment to figure it all out for the next year and come back to you.
Sold.
Okay.
So, okay, any more discussion on the motion, because we do have a motion on the table.
and I didn't get who seconded.
Craig did. Is there any more discussion on the motion? If not, all in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye. Aye. Pose same sign.
Aye.
And since we got one no, we'll sign him to check into it.
And I'll agree to take it on. I should have done it, I guess.
Thank you, Scott, appreciate it.
Should have met last year.
Should have had you do it last year, yeah. Okay, the next item is the office lease renewal, which is coming up the end of July. Ron?
If I could just take a minute, Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
If the minutes might just insert in that I will be looking at this over the
So
ensuing
be
year.
it.
So this, agenda item 9 is just an office lease renewal. We're down at the garage where we have that office that most everybody's probably been to, that Dan occupies on a fairly regular basis. We house our files there, et cetera. It's kind of a point of contact if it's necessary for some kind of a public contact outside of one of our bi-monthly meetings. And so our contract for that lease ends at the end of July. Our monthly rent going forward would be $500 a month. And as it says, if we do decide that we're going to be doing something else, we find a better deal, someone's going to give us a free space sometime during the year, we can get out of our lease with a 45-day notice. But at this point in time, we'll need to renew that lease. So I would move that we renew our lease for another year at the $500 a month rental rate.
I'll
Is there a
second.
seconded by Scott. Discussion on the motion.
Is the space we have, Dan, big enough to operate in?
Yes,
I mean, it's pretty impacted with stuff.
it's tight, but I have 3 chairs in there. And
All right.
I've had 3 people. We don't have to be friends, but.
Any other discussion? All in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. The next item is the grant request from the Medicine Mountain Boy Scout Ranch for their water project that they proposed to us at our last meeting, and they're back again here today. And Mark Anderson is going to start the discussion out.
I'm going to get closer to a mic.
Yes, if you would. Appreciate it.
I can't remember, are we using slides from last time, or?
I didn't think that was really the issue so much. I have them if you wanted them, but really, in terms of the design, I think the issue is more the funding request.
Yeah,
and how that was going to
and
work.
you guys, in your package, you had applied for the state water plan for, acceptance on that program for possible money too, so that
I'll give you
was...
an update on that.
Okay, sounds good. Go ahead.
So, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, thanks again for the opportunity. At the last meeting on May 9th, Mike Lewis and I were here. Mike is the scout executive. But today, we also have Bob Morcom. Bob Morcom is the civil engineer. I'm sure many of you know him. He's worked in the area for many years. I think the issue last time, and we kind of left it hanging a little bit, is exactly how much money did we feel like we were going to need. We had our own kind of pencil work of about $25K, and we thought, oh, that fits well with the situation with being able to do it with
One vote.
Mm-hmm. So we tried to stick to that. We have, in the meantime, and Paul will explain that in greater detail. One of the other suggestions the board had was to, look into, some benefactors, construction companies who might be willing to lend an excavator and so forth. And basically, you suggested we sharpen the pencil and come back. So we're coming back now with a little sharper pencil, but it got dull making all those numbers go. With that, I'll let Bob explain. If there's any need to explain, what the situation was, what the issue was, maybe for those board members that weren't here, and that is the Scout Camp operates there at Medicine Mountain, has a water supply that's inadequate, especially in the summertime when we have full capacity with Scouts. It was constructed in 1975. What we're proposing to do is take the same principle, meaning design an infiltration gallery system, but a larger diameter, longer, with more subterranean storage for water, to be able to meet the need. We have water right in place. We don't have to mess with that. We've already gotten the blessing of the state to live within the water right we already have. So that's all taken care of. It's just a matter of getting the construction done, in the most efficient way possible. And Bob's been sharpening his pencil.
So part of my duty with Boy Scouts is I'm on the properties committee, and so like Mark said, we're trying to find an effective way of increasing the capacity of that gallery. One of the things that with the information you have right now, you saw a number in there of about $51,000 is what we had estimated after we got the overall scope pretty well defined. Part of that in the question I understand is that we have some construction partners and also engineering partners on the project that we reached out to try to get some additional information. Kevin Slee and Jackson, KLJ, Dana Foreman is an engineering resource that's going to be putting together a more detailed design over above the preliminary report. And then RCS Construction, specifically Bob Skull, we've been working with him to give us some more detailed opinion of construction costs. So it's sort of hot off the press, but I just talked to Bob today, and he had gone through what we had proposed and looked at different options. And right now, we're in that probably $50,000 to $60,000 area. What we're trying to do now is look at value engineering to try to reduce the scope where we can, to cut the costs where we can. And two really primary things that really impact that. It's the length of the pipe from where the well is at. We can get it shorter. we can cut the cost quite a bit by reducing the amount of gravel and also excavation costs, because it'll be about 20 feet deep is where we're at. And so that's really what we're trying to do, is reduce that scope. The 24-inch diameter pipe that we're going to use for the gallery, that's about 120 feet, maybe 140 feet of gallery that we want to keep. That's probably going to stay the same. So I guess with that, that's where we're at right now. We're looking at construction in the fall, in October, November. That's when the least amount of surface water is there, and least amount of issues that we have with dewatering and stuff like that. Another point you brought up was on the state water plan. We are on the state water plan now, but in the letter that we received this last week, it said we're on it, but we have no idea if we're going to get funded or anything on that. So it's, our name's there, but we don't know if we're going to get any additional funding or when that would occur. Our overall goal would be to try to construct this fall so that in the spring next year we have the gallery in place and up and ready to go. So that'll open up to any questions. Mike also might have some comments on it too. So.
The only other thing I would add primarily is that we primarily talked about this around our camping season. That's when our bulk usage is. We are in the middle of that right now. And this week and next week are our two biggest weeks of the summer up there. So it's going to be interesting to see if we can make it through without additional water needs. But this is the season in which we have the need for it. So if we can construct in the fall and be ready for next year, full scope, that's our goal.
Okay. Any questions for any of the board members? Ron?
Yeah, I have three. I don't know who's going to get the answer. The first question is, now that you're on a state water plan, what's the decision timing on that?
It could, looks like it'd be in 2024.
2024, okay.
The information I have.
Second question is, as you've been working with RCS and KLJ, et cetera, and they've refined, their cost scope a little bit after they've looked at it additionally, how does their input into the construction and engineering reduce the overall cost, or has there been any outreach there yet? I mean, what's going to be the bill to the scouts?
Right. Yeah, that's a real good question. In talking with Bob today, there's some areas that he has suggested that we can maybe reduce the cost. As an example, mobilization up to the camp, his costs on that are pretty low. Like $1,400 and to mobilize up there, so that's pretty low. Dewatering of the area, there's about a $5,000 bill there, but depending on when we do it, that can be reduced, and also the length of construction time. If we can do it in 1 week versus 2 weeks, that's going to reduce the overall cost on it. We haven't talked to suppliers yet, like material suppliers, specifically gravel. If we can get a reduction, maybe a donation from them of a reduction of some material costs, we'd still be looking at that. And then, pipe manufacturers, Bob has gotten a couple bids from them, but there might be another source that we can get a reduced cost on that, or maybe portion donated. KLJ, they're, in talking with them, they're going to be donating some of their services and keeping the cost down there. And then, what we can't make up in funding, our VSA will have to make it up to make the project go.
So we're still, we're a little further down the road than we were in May, but we aren't to the point where we understand the cost of the project to the scouts yet and where they might need help from us.
Yeah, we're in that $50,000 to $60,000 range, and that sort of confirms what our earlier numbers were. I think we'd need to get some funding beyond the $25,000 if possible. That lowers the impact to everything, but we don't know. You're absolutely right. We don't have that final number yet.
Good.
When do you, I mean, this is my third question then, because that was kind of what my feeling was.
Yeah.
You're still searching for the numbers. By the meeting in August, will you have those numbers, where we can react to them? Or would that be, even closer to when you want to build? Will you have those numbers?
Yeah, we'll need to get that refined by August for sure to be able to get into that construction period when we need to.
But one of the things I would add, though, there, being a nonprofit, one of the things that we deal with when we're getting into any sort of projects is we may not know some of those donation or supplier contributions literally until we're at the project. It's one of those things that some of that can be last minute stuff. So right now, what we're trying to use is projecting on that $50,000 to $60,000, and if we can reduce that down, that's our goal. But we know we're probably going to be pretty close in that range.
So the more final design of the system, KLJ is going to develop a plan profile over and above the preliminary report that we have, and that will give us, we're going to do some additional investigation into the depth of bedrock to determine exactly how deep we'll need to go, but we're going to try to get that refined and refine that scope.
Do you think by our August meeting that you could have a solid request from us as to what you'd like us to look at?
I think we probably could do that.
I might elaborate just a
Okay,
little
go
bit
ahead,
real
Mark.
quick, and that is the reason why there may sound like there's some ambiguity here. But for the state water plan submission, it was required that we get an engineer involved and get these estimates. And I
Right.
think I mentioned before, they put inflation numbers in there right now for a projected project next spring, and lots of costs. I mean, but for if the state is going to pay for this money, not coming out of the Boy Scouts pocketbook directly, it's an engineer's estimate, as if you're going to do anything else. In the same way with talking with KLJ and talking with Bob Skull, we didn't really ask him. I don't think, maybe you can correct me, Bob, how much of this are you contributing? This is the engineer. This is what he's telling us would cost to have them come and do it. But in the past, he's contributed, for example, excavator time, or at least other projects contributed time and effort. He hasn't really said, okay, this much I'm going to contribute. Not materials, I'm sure, but his time and equipment may very well be. That would, again, he was looking at a number, if you're going out to do it, using an engineer. Anyway, so that's why there's some ambiguity there. We don't really know how much at this point they might contribute.
What do you think you'll know by the next meeting?
Well, I think we'll be more refined on the exact quantities and everything that we would need to have at that time. I mean, because by August we need to be able to make sure that Skull will be able to do the construction in the fall. And that also, that'll help tie down some of the prices for material.
Scott, did you have something?
Yes, I'm in favor of helping out on this, but I'm real fuzzy on the finances here. I mean, it's a $60,000 project. You're hoping most of it will be contributions from supporters of the camp.
I'd say most of it.
Well, other than our ability to provide cash, where else are you looking for?
There would be
for cash assistance.
Contributions from reduction of the engineer's costs, any reductions or savings from the construction costs, and then it would be filled in to finalize with private donations.
Okay, and so we're a donator for cash. Do you have any idea what other ones you're looking at? Will the district itself, BSA, put money in?
Yes.
Yes.
You know how much you're able to contribute?
The board has authorized us a certain amount, but that's going to depend on what the total cost of the project really comes down to. So if, for example, if you guys, let's just say out of 60,000 you put in 25, let's say we get 10 to 15 from donations and there's amount left, we're going to reduce that amount by as much as we can with private donations, other supporters, and the council will pick up the rest. So it kind of depends on what that what that private donation amount is coming in at the end.
Basically, bottom line is the project's gonna go ahead regardless, and whatever needs to be
Yes.
paid by the district will be paid by the district.
That's correct. And that's why we're trying to get in position so we can make sure that Skull Construction knows and gets it onto their calendar so that we can be ready to move forward.
And you're asking us for 25.
That would be the upfront request, yes.
Okay. I can support that.
Real advantage of West Dakota funding, of course, is some of those funds could be used to purchase materials and get it on site and be ready to go in the fall.
What's it cost for a camper to attend for a week?
I think this year it was right at $390.
Wow, really?
Yeah, but that's just, there are some camps that go as high as $600-700. Ours is around $400.
I had no idea it was that high.
Yeah.
Ron's got a question, and then you, Dan.
Well, I don't have that so much of the question as I guess I'm not opposed to being, part of maybe your financial package, but I think you need to actually prepare a request for funding from us, which you have not done yet, and then in August, we can react to wherever you're at with your, combination of reduced engineering fees, donations from Skull, private entities that may have already, ponied up, et cetera. So we kind of know what the Scout, office is really up against in terms of funding, because I feel a little funny just saying, okay, we're going to give you some money, but nobody knows really what it's going to cost the Scouts.
Well, we've had, I know Danny got a question, but we've put money into some projects that haven't gone forward because of not having the money, you know what I mean?
Right.
So, I'm kind of like Ron. We need to make sure that this project is going to go and not going to be 2 years down the road.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And, that was part of the thing with getting confirmation with Bob Skull. Unfortunately, it's late, as this morning, in fact, that we're going to be in that area by,
Well, you got some good people you're working with. The names you've already said, so I have some confidence there. But did you have a question too, Dan?
I seem to be gathering that there's no expectation of funding from the state water plan, and I wonder where does that fit in?
I can answer that. We work with Mike Perkovich as well as Bill Lass from the local Council of Local Governments. And all through the process, they said the Black Hills Area Council of Boy Scouts is qualified and eligible to receive funds under the state water plan, but Mike Perkovich from the very start told us that they would view it as a low priority, even though it's a small amount, that they typically fund water supplies for communities and so forth, not so much for Boy Scout camp. So we've been told from the very beginning, well, you can go ahead and submit the stuff, and Bill Lass with Black Hills Council helped us put the package together. And the last email we got back, they said, well, you're on it, but we can't give you any assurance of funding. So
Right.
even if it all went smoothly, we would probably not know until well into 2024 whether or not state
Right,
water
I
funds will
wouldn't
be
figure.
available.
So this seems to be just a paper exercise. I've been kind of confused.
To some
Anyhow,
extent, yes.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Okay.
That explains it.
So you got your marching orders in for the next meeting in August.
Yep.
Yeah, well, I guess there's no more questions. Oh,
Just a clarification on that, we do have, kind of a proposal guideline. You filled out most of it, but we need a financial sheet. So we know where the Scout office is coming from, we know where, your donations are coming from, whatever. So we know what we're doing.
Yeah.
So a budget.
A budget, yeah. Okay, well, thanks for coming back again.
Maybe you can answer this one. Who makes the decision on state water plan funding? Is that the Board of Water Management or?
Water and Natural Resources?
Well, there's all kinds of boards around.
Yeah, I think it's the Board of Water and Natural Resources.
Yeah, I think that's right.
It's through the state water plant, yeah.
And this one, anything under 100,000 is looked at as chicken feed. That doesn't help.
I think that, having worked with them personally,
I just got $200 million from the feds, or gave that amount to the water pipeline thing.
Yeah.
There ought to be some chicken feed around.
We'll use the chicken feed.
We'll see you at our August meeting.
All right.
Thanks for coming again. All right, the next item is an update on Pactola and Rapid Creek issues. Okay, you have the floor.
Ron's got some stuff to do too, but I saw that we have the Bureau of Reclamation's come out with a new Water Smart grant. Up to $5 million will be available in their applied sciences, and that fits in with the area that we need to be able to get matching for models and that sort of thing. And I think their date was October 17. It's October sometime. And so we need to move forward if we're going to apply for that grant. And Ron, you had a proposal that is key to being able to provide that grant.
Yeah, well, as I think most of the board knows, and some of us know in more detail, we've met with and had discussions with the Bureau, over the last several months, and then we also ramped up some of our conversations with an engineering company beginning a little before the Black Hills hydrology meeting. And so they've actually done some pre-work for us, I guess, in sort of preparation for being able to work with other stakeholders as well as being prepared for applying for a Water Smart grant, because we didn't really know what we needed to apply for. We just know that we need to do some additional modeling to help, vet out some of these management decisions that might take place, over time with the Bureau, and to understand whether or not some of these water management decisions that were suggested by Rosemary Squillis in the project that we funded for, evaluation of the Deerfield-Pactola system are viable. So the proposal, it's kind of a draft form of a proposal. It came in from BAR this morning, so it wasn't in the packet, but it's in front of you now. It kind of identifies the project scope that needs to go forward from their perspective, the items that need to be done, and then kind of a general cost without getting into real detail. And so that provides us, I guess, a base point that we're going to take off from and meet with the city probably next to begin talking with them about whether or not they're, on board with being part of a Water Smart grant application or independent funding of a proposal like this to help them identify, some of these options. We'll probably meet with Rapid Valley Conservancy District, and there are other potential partners out there that we would want to pull in for a Water Smart grant application or independent funding if we weren't successful, like the fly fishers, maybe Pennington County, some of those kinds of folks. So that's kind of where we're at. But I think that the thing that came in from VAR, from Miguel Wong in particular, gives us a really good idea of what we might need to do to help understand what we can do up there with the Deerfield-Pactola system to maybe have more water out in the wintertime, have flood pulse mitigation, do some of those things that were identified in the Squillis thesis. And the proposal that's on the table from BAR as a talking point, it also uses the recommended software that the Bureau uses in the West versus the software that Rosemary used when she did her simulation work. So that fits in with, the kind of things that the Bureau would be acceptable to. So I guess we got to talk more, basically. But we have more to go on now than we had before, other than just some general ideas. And it hasn't cost us anything so far. BAR has been doing this, to kind of assist us with, of course, the end result, hopefully being some kind of work for them in the future. But that's sort of how engineering companies work many times.
So our next step then, Ron, would be to visit with the city of Rapid City, since they're the primary they are the only contractor in Rapid.
I think we need to meet with a new mayor
and
bring this, topic to him, because he may or may not be real aware of all the stuff that we've been kind of doing in the past in a very detailed way, and then to begin talking about, how we want to go forward, because there are municipal water demands, that are increasing, like we heard about earlier. There's flood pulse mitigation, that could be pretty desirable. I mean, right now they're dumping, I think, about 250 because we're into the flood pool. Yep. If we have a big event, that's going to go way up again, and then Rapid Valley gets flooded, as well as all kinds of infrastructure and places in between. So, and we held the water for a long time, or they held the water for a long time this spring. It was like just under 40 CFS, which was I thought a little unusual, given the fact of the kind of spring we were having.
Yeah, wet spring.
But they basically waited until it was full, then they started dumping water, which is kind of what we want to try and avoid if we can, if we understand the risks, and have better modeling.
Yeah.
When they're dumping Deerfield into Dakota too, as I understand,
Deerfield
Deerfield's full.
is, I think Deerfield was running like 85 last time I looked, so that's a lot of water for Castle Creek
It was
below
80, it was
Deerfield.
85. And like I said, I checked the other day, it was 250.
Yeah, it's just, so if we have another big dump, it'll go right up again, because they'll match flows or increase them from where they are now in order to reduce, the impingement on the flood pool.
Do these entities talk to each other or not? Who? The ones that are controlling the water.
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah?
I guess my main question right now is I've been involved in some of these preliminary discussions. Bar's estimating a cost of 150 to 200,000. Are we looking to fund that separate from the Water Smart, or is that something that would be funded as part of a Water Smart application?
That is eligible for the Water Smart.
Right, so I mean,
Yeah,
I
so
think that's the key ingredient to the directors, is that we would be looking to apply to Water Smart for funding to cover this cost, and West Dakota might perhaps contribute some amount as a matching.
Yeah, we'd have to have a match.
As well as the city and other players.
Right.
But then
So-
again, if we don't get a Water Smart, we sort of also know what the cost is if we want to do this.
Right, from my standpoint, if we're gonna vote next month, say, well, we need to ante up $200,000, that'd take quite a bit of discussion, but we're looking to submit a proposal.
We're a long ways away from asking for money. We're just
Right.
we're scoping the project.
Right, so we're that would be kind of a starting point for what sort of funding might we need to ask for
Right.
in a proposal, and there might be other things too. There was
This
stakeholder groups and things like that. So
Well, because there's a bigger picture than, this is just the model.
Right.
That we'll be able to tell, okay, can the reservoir do the things that we want it to do? And, that all the stakeholders want to do it. There's also, with reclamation, you've got to go through the public involvement process, you've got to have a stakeholders group. So there's other costs that'll have to be incurred that can also be put into the Water Smart grant.
So what is the deadline for submittal?
October 17, I believe. It's in October.
So what I would see, I'm sorry.
That's all
Mr.
right.
Chairman?
Go ahead, Ron.
What I would see a potential request for in August, if we're successful in meeting with the city and maybe some of these other key stakeholders, and they say, yeah, let's do this. Assembling a Water Smart application isn't necessarily something any one of us want to take on. They're pretty detailed. So we might want to ask, let's say Bar, or somebody else to help us put that together so that we get it done, in a timely fashion and have all the stuff for it. And they are familiar with that.
One more possibility, I think the city recently hired a person whose primary role is writing grant requests. So, I think the way to start is with the Public Works Department and say, hey, would it help to meet with the mayor? But it sounds like that is the next move. So.
Our thought was we got a new mayor, so if we start at the mayor's office and get the mayor up to speed on what we're thinking about doing, and then bring in the Public Works Department, and if there's a grant writer, possibly too, they'd bring in whoever they think they need to get involved with this.
I'd personally start with Public Works and see if they want to talk to the mayor, but you guys are kind of at the steering wheel, and I'm comfortable with whatever the next step is.
Is there anything else then? Or?
No, I think that's it. We're going to be contacting the city and
I was glad to see this come
Yes,
today.
it was good timing.
Yeah, it was very good timing. Okay, that was, item number 12 is approved travel and per diem for Dan Driscoll to travel to East Dakota Water Conference. And what was the date on that?
October 11th.
October 11th. And so he's requesting funds available to do that. And there's a breakdown of what.
Is that a one-way trip?
Huh?
Is that round trip?
Is that a one-way trip? I think everybody saw the email that had been sent from David Kringen, asking if I'd come give an update on our erosion control and stormwater management activities. And I said I could sure do it. It just require, funding by the board, approval for travel costs. So
I move approval of reimbursement of costs as proposed for $678.
Okay, second motion by Dennis. Discussion on the motion.
I think that's kind of an upper limit, correct? I mean, actual expenses up to that amount.
Right.
Right.
Understand.
I just want to add that number is an estimate. I don't know how much hotels would be during that time. So you may want to, for safety, up that. I thought that was a conservative estimate, but I'll just comment that we don't get state rates on anything.
We don't.
No. For some reason.
Well, I think the main thing would be the mileage, whatever you used for
and I was assuming,
$300. So
yeah, I was assuming you probably want to stay 2 nights. If it were me,
no, it'll be just one.
Okay, well that'll knock it back down from my estimate.
You should be okay with 600.
Because I wouldn't want to drive at
Well,
dark 30.
I've got a brother in Pier. I'll stay in Pier
Okay.
on my way down there. And
Yeah, so when you're all done, you can submit a voucher and.
What's the allowable rate on mileage? What was?
I think it's 42 cents a mile.
Whatever. So I mean, right. So yeah, I hadn't seen estimates, but I'm sure this would be adequate. So.
Okay.
Okay, any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All the same sign.
Okay, could I get that motion again to fund?
That was Scott's
Scott
motion. To fund it based on the dollars that were shown there under that item. Got it?
Got it, thank you.
Okay, the next item is to determine the date for a special meeting, listening session meeting on water issues. We talked about that last meeting, Craig brought it up, so.
We did, and we talked about sometime in November.
Right.
And so I guess I was kind of looking at the calendar thinking, well, could we even be in the end of, like, either late in October or early in November? And then we're going to have to make sure, I'm not sure how you did this logistically, but I would think if we had a span of time that we thought was available to us, that would be good, then we could try to find out, because we're going to have some key players like the city, we want them, and some other key players probably, try to get a date that works well for them.
Do we still have that list that was at the last meeting? So we've got that list that was invited the last couple of times, and so we can use that same list. I know.
I can provide that. Somebody would have to reach out to particular people if they're important. And I could do that too, but.
Yeah.
Then we have to reserve if we're going to have it at West Campus, reserve that.
Yeah, we should probably check that right away before we actually determine what our meeting dates is to see what's available.
Well, I was thinking if we had a range,
Yeah.
if we kind of have a range of when we know ourselves we're going to be in town. We got questions.
On previous meetings, I'd taken the lead on setting them up, and I had just picked a second Tuesday, our typical meeting date, and I don't bother asking Tom, Dick, and Harry if they can make it or not. We're far enough in advance. We just say, here's when our meeting is, and make sure the outdoor campus is available. Was there a big reason for a preference of November versus September as a month when we don't have a meeting?
I don't know November either, so November 14th, that gives us time to reach out to people.
What was that, Cheryl?
November 14th would be the second Tuesday in November, and that would give us time to reach out to people.
September would be early enough too. I personally would prefer September, but doesn't make a lot of difference.
So in that case, we'd be looking at September 12.
I won't be around then.
I don't think I'm going to be around.
Yeah, I'm not going to be here in September 12th.
Okay, let's go with November.
So I guess that's okay if we want to just go with November 14.
Yeah.
I'll start working on that date.
Okay, let's do that and just work on that, and maybe at our next meeting, kind of give us an update if that's looking good at our August meeting.
Okay.
And would it matter to any directors? I mean, the outdoor campus is really the place to do it. So I think it seems to work best as a 1 o'clock meeting. If we can't do it Tuesday, would like Wednesday or Thursday matter to anybody?
Not to me.
I mean, that gives us a little bit more room. And I mean, to me, if we needed to go the following week or something, but I mean,
don't get too late in November.
Get to Thanksgiving.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. The following week wouldn't be good, I guess.
I would say if we could go that week of the 14th would be better.
14th would be the best, and and that 15, 16, I guess I could say if we needed to go to the week ahead of time, would it matter? I think the best thing is get a day and then run with it.
Yeah. Well, Craig can check on that and then get back to us, give us an update at our August.
I'll find out when if the outdoor campus is open the 14th, we'll just target that date and go.
Okay, sounds good.
I've got a contact for the...
Okay, I'll get it from you.
Yeah, I don't remember, ping me, but I can email it to you.
Okay.
Where is the outdoor campus? I'm sorry, I'm so ignorant.
Sturgis Road. Sturgis Road.
Sturgis Road.
It's out across from
It's
the
Game
Across
Fishing
from the
Parks.
quarry.
Oh,
The Game Fishing Parks outdoor campus.
okay.
It's just kind of across from Simon Construction.
So Director Care, was there anything you need to have me do, or you want to? We have the 2 adjacent rooms reserved, so that keep that in mind. There's a divider.
I was thinking I need to get the list from you. I'll be in touch with you. Okay. I'll try to get as much stuff as I can out of you and then get stuff done.
Perfect.
That's assuming I'm still around.
I'm going to catch you
That's
tomorrow.
not funny.
No,
Well, that's one of the other items here.
Oh, yeah, that's actually the next item.
It is.
Now that you mention it. Number 14, is vote on the extension of the administrator's contract for Dan Mullally. And Ronnie, you want to take that item?
Well, as we all recall, we made sort of an effort to work with Black Hills Council of Local Governments to be our administrator going forward, and that fell through. Dan agreed to kind of do a month-by-month deal while we were when we were in the throes of negotiating with them, and then he also agreed, after we were obviously unsuccessful, to stay on for another year, or maybe even a few more months as necessary. But this contract is for a year extension of his contract, basically under the existing terms, with one modification that's a separate agenda item. So I guess we can deal with that then, but he would only be in the office 1 day a week under this new contract versus 2 days a week where he's there during a 4-hour period. So it's pretty simple. I guess I would move approval of a new contract with Dan for a 1-year period for acting as our administrator.
Is there a second? Seconded by Tom. Discussion on the motion. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, motion carries. So the next item then is voting on this policy change to eliminate Thursday as a required office hours that Ron just mentioned. Is that your item, Cheryl? Your name's on there.
Well, we sent the email
Yeah.
about it, because we had to
Yeah.
prior to the meeting. So, other than that, that's it. We just have to vote on it, if that's okay.
Is that a motion?
Yes.
Motion's made by Cheryl.
Second.
Seconded by who?
Let's go. Whoever wants.
Dan Driscoll.
Close your eyes.
Okay. Motion has been made and seconded to make that change, eliminate Thursday for office hours.
As long as that's not this Thursday, it'd be good.
Yeah.
Because I got to get with him.
Oh,
I'll still be in.
Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all
Can
in fa-
anybody tell me why we have these policies apart from the bylaws?
I couldn't
What's
answer
their
that.
legal standing apart from the bylaws? I mean,
I couldn't-
I've never been in an organization where we had policies.
I
And
know you asked-
what happens if Dan violates the policy and isn't there?
We fire him.
He might not show up.
I know you asked that question. I don't know. Personally, I don't know. I don't have an answer for it.
Dan looks like he
I
might.
don't really have the answer. I did promise to find out, ask Jay Gilbertson, and I forgot to. I was talking to him the other day, but I can check on that.
They operate in the same way?
I don't know if there's any statutory requirement. I kind of doubt there is a
I
requirement.
don't think there is at all.
A very simple way, just go to the internet like ours and see what they have. Bylaws, policy. It's going to be available on their website.
Yep.
Yeah, if they have a website. Our website, I'll have to say, is the best of all of them.
Oh, I don't know.
I'm
Theirs
not-
is
It's pretty good. It's pretty good.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what inspired us to update
Okay,
this.
Yeah, I think we've got a really good website.
Yeah, we do.
I just don't understand this at all, why we have these
Well, I'm not sure I do either, but
policies and what their status is. Are they guidelines? Are they mandatory like bylaws? Or what's their enforceability? Is it-
Hopefully we don't
that's
have to
above
go down
me.
that road.
Anyway, with that said, if Dan doesn't object, I don't object.
okay.
No,
You okay, Dan?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Any other discussion?
This requires a 2/3 vote, by the way. It's in our bylaws.
But this isn't a bylaw.
So it's kind of a circular.
The bylaws say policies require a 2/3 vote?
I'm sorry?
The bylaws say policy changes require a 2/3
Yeah,
vote?
both-
I think so.
Yeah.
All right, are we ready to vote?
Aye.
All in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That's unanimous.
Okay.
Thank you.
If they try and fire you for violating this, let me know and I'll reactivate it.
All right, moving along to item 16, the draft budget and levy request for 2024. Ron?
Okay, so on pages 40 and 41, and maybe all around to 40, that's 42, yeah. It's sort of the material that we want to be discussing. So the first item that we build our budget on, is basically our levy, our tax levy. And so on page 40, it shows what our default tax dollars that would be estimated to be coming in for, tax year 2023 that comes into us in 2024. That's $249,000, $249.76, which is it's a little bit more than what we had this year. It's all based on, population, basically increase, consumer price index, and we actually have a 0.023 of 1 mil levy. So that's, a pretty small levy. A mil is $1 per every $1,000 of assessed value on your house. So, for example, on I don't know, $250,000 house, you're gonna end up paying $10 a year or something like that with that mill levy.
It's actually around $3.
Yeah.
Oh.
That's what I pay.
Okay, well, anyway, something like that. It's not
Anyways, sorry.
a big levy, but it you know, accumulates over the context of our entire district to be about $249.76, and that's our default value. So we need to decide if that's going to be, you know, what we put out on public notice, and then that's what we build our budget off of, is essentially our, you know, anticipated revenue sources and income, and that's on page 41 of 43. It's a little bit conservative. Dan's got it identified there where our carryover funds are there. That anticipates that we spend all this money that we've got allocated, you know, for projects. And then we have our, you know, our interest, our income from taxes. And then that's a pretty conservative income estimate, because some of these CDs we have out there for with the 1 year duration are actually generating, or will generate, a little over $12,000 of interest per CD. So that's a conservative estimate on interest. But you can run the numbers there. It shows kind of where we're at on that projected you know, income and available funds sheet. And then I think he's got a little more detail if you want to really look at it on, you know, page 42, which is sort of a wild guess at what our budget might really be like, using our existing budget as sort of the beginning point where we kind of have known items, you know, as far as administrative expenses, director expenses, legal notices, office rent, etc. And then we have a large category basically under projects. We know some of them that we anticipate coming in, and then we have a lot of them that we don't know what they might be yet because we react to them as they come in. And that sort of shows, you know, basically a deficit in terms of the amount of money that we would receive next year and the amount of money that we anticipate to spend, which isn't a problem because we have money in the bank to spend as it might be necessary. And we don't have a good picture on what we're really going to spend in terms of projects yet. But I think the item that we have to act on is basically to approve our tax levy request and then to approve this tentative budget so it can be published and then acted on when we have our next meeting in July.
Would that be two separate votes then, or today?
We have to approve this for publication.
Okay.
And then it has to sit there, you know, and be out there on public notice, and then we approve the budget, I think, in August. Is that correct, Dan?
Correct. So
yeah.
This will be not necessarily the official budget, but I would like permission, and it could be a motion to publish this as for the August meeting, and so then in August that will be the official vote.
Right.
Okay.
So
right.
in this case, I combined both the levy and the budget as one. We're in one item here.
One motion?
Right.
Yeah, and maybe in August we could separate them.
Okay.
They kind of tie together. It's kind of a circular thing, so I think it makes sense to view them as one item.
So I would move that we authorize Dan to publish our proposed tax levy request and 2024 budget at this point.
Okay, seconded by Tom. Discussion on the motion.
We could still make changes even though we published it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Well, the budget's pretty fuzzy. You know, it's based on what we did this year. Yeah, and we don't really know what we're going to do in 2024 yet. So it's sort of just a skeleton budget that's built on our tax levy request.
Yeah. I mean, we just seem to be accumulating money and not spending it, except on...
We need to find some...
Well, maybe I'll change this to a $200,000 request for bar. I mean, we got to be conservative, and but we do have some things that might be coming up that could be, you know, tapping into those reserves.
I think if something moves forward on Pactola, what we
They'll
got
eat
in the
this
bank
money in a hurry.
is just a drop in the bucket.
So that's my question, is should we put some of those kinds of things in here, like the Rapid Creek work that we're going to do? Should we have a line item that actually states that? We're going to publish this, the public will see it. And if we're kind of committed, we're going to go ahead with that, should we have it in our budget to at least kind of show that that is a subject we're looking at?
I've got a reply.
Go ahead.
Who does?
I do.
He does.
Oh, okay.
We ground through this in a lot of details over the course of the last couple of years, and Jay Gilbertson from East Dakota came and helped us out with it, and the consensus was that it's best to keep it this way and let the details fall out later. It streamlines the whole process, and anything we do is to some extent guesswork what's coming down the tube. So
we've got money in the bank too. I mean, if something came up, we could have a special meeting about that, even if it wasn't necessarily in the budget.
Yeah. And just to clarify that this budget is non-binding, there's nothing to say we have to stick with this.
And to kind of go off of everybody's point, it's more or less of an idea. One thing that Jay Gilbertson said when we had this meeting discussing it like 4 years ago is, all of a sudden, let's say we have $100,000 for Pactola restoration. All of a sudden, then there might be other organizations like, where's that money going? Like, who gets it? Well, I want to put trees along Pactola. That's restoring the water health. And then you kind of get into that fuzzy area because we don't really know what those items actually cover, per se. And so J.A. Gilbertson's statement, like Dan said, is to more or less give you an idea of what's in the bank, what you already know that you're going to use, and then what's kind of the residual, and then play it that way. Okay.
Yeah, and so in August, the idea is kind of a couple different things. One is so the board kind of has an idea of where the organization is going, but also as important is give the public a chance to come to the meetings. I mean, they could talk at this meeting too if they wanted, but this will be their last, August will be their last chance to comment on our budget.
Okay,
Okay,
that sounds reasonable.
So what is the motion now?
Basically, approve this for publication.
I don't think we had a second, or did we?
I was
Tom the second.
So motion by Cole, seconded by Mac to authorize Mullally to publish the draft budget prior to the August budget meeting. So this will be published 2 consecutive weeks before that meeting.
Okay, good.
In our official newspapers.
Any more discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All same sign. Motion carries. All right, we're moving on to item 17, erosion control update from Dan Driscoll. You have the floor.
Have you got a microphone up there? Dan, it'll be close enough.
Do you need some slides?
But yeah, you could bring the slides up, and I'll go up here so I can use my pointer. Yeah. So everybody's been aware of the work that we started at Star Village. Was basically our first entry point, and it's still kind of a main project. Started in 2021. That slide is from 2021. Shows that's actually winter wheat coming up through the erosion control mat. About a third of an acre that we treated there. These are 2 lines of wattles along a head cut there where it drops off steeply, and we've got about a quarter mile runs along the top of the hill. Many of you are familiar with it, more familiar than you really want to be. Anyhow, the summary on it in terms of what we've done so far this year is almost nothing. Director Bierke and I went up there and we added a couple of lifts to some of our silt fences that have been filling in. The city has been kind of slow to move on this project. Last year we had trouble getting manpower out of them, and this year I just don't hear from them, and I kind of decided to really kind of let it rest for a while, and I'll be knocking on their door. But anyhow, the next the next slide then, I'll move through these pretty quick, so have your finger ready. That's looking from below, looking uphill to this same area, and so that's a red shirt hanging in a tree and finding things like that. The grass is coming in pretty good there, and then you can see we'd installed little wattles in some of these rivulets. They're catching things, and this is kind of interesting. When we hauled the sediment in there, it was on a trailer behind Bierke's side-by-side, and we had a little access trail here we left open, but there are places like this we had just kind of slide it over the edge and dump it there, and we'd had it impregnated with some seed, and so you can see it's wet around the edges. It's holding moisture, and this stuff is growing up out of it. So things are doing pretty well there. It's a big area where we're not going to be able to tackle it all at once. The next slide is going to show an area just to the right. This is a side cut. So the grass that's growing there, and there's a lot of sweet clover in there, that's basically undisturbed, uneroded, and so we ran a line of wattles in there, and then we kind of herringboned some in there, and you can see more wattles along the way. There's a deep draw, and then we limbed some trees and threw brush in there, and we've been throwing bags of leaf litter in there. Craig got to where he'd help me go out and scavenge lawn waste bags out of the dumpsters, and
we never got picked up.
I think that trailer would hold like 52 of them, and then we'd stuff 20 or 30 in the back of my pickup and in the top. Anyhow, we'd haul them down the hill, but it's holding things in place. So the next slide, here's another head cut area a little bit to the west, and in this area the approach was we used Wager's Bobcat, and we have two cargo sleds that two of them will hold one scoop from the Bobcat, and we slide them down the hill and we tip them over and we spread them out pretty thin, and we just kind of spread them above these wattles, and it's growing. And you can see over there the next slide then is just farther along, and there's a little benchy spot there, and so it was convenient. We just get as far as we get in any given day. The next slide then is transitioning. That's just the right side of that tree, and then there's another side cut here, and we just getting what we can down there, using things like a tree root there to hold something, and that was about a month ago. I haven't been back, but the way the weather's been, I'm sure it's growing good. So the next slide, that side cut goes down the hill and then comes back up. So here's the other side of it. It's in amongst a bunch of, it turns out is black locust is the type of tree, but you can just see kind of the edge here. There's a wattle, there's some native grass there, but we managed to dump a few sled loads down there and threw in a few more wattles, and that's growing. Next slide. This was kind of opportunistic. We made a little trail up here with the Bobcat, and we were able to bring it down by the bucketful instead of a sled, and just dumped it and raked it, and it's come up pretty good. Next slide. The last one from Star Village is kind of the west end or southwest corner of it, and there's kind of head cut in here, and then it spans out into a bigger area that, there was some partial vegetation and some blowout, but you can see how thin the layer of sediment is there, or topsoil, but kind of experimental, but it's doing a lot of good things. So what our real approach had been was attacking this head cut, side cuts, try to keep the thing from getting any bigger, and so it's stabilized and actually getting a little smaller, and really the key ingredient will be to talk more with the city and see if they can bring resources to bear. At some point in time, do we kind of look at contracting some of this? I mean, we've done a lot of volunteer work in there, and there's kind of a limit to how much volunteer work we can really do in these places. But to me, we've achieved an awful lot with bare minimum funding, and, certainly we could afford to spend more in there. It's really a matter of how might we spend it. But, any questions on Star Village before I move on? Hearing none. LaCroix is another one with the Parks Department. So there's wattles that were installed in 2021, and those are our grow wattles. They're filled with dirt. And so we made them 18 foot long is how long the trailer is, and it takes 4 people to carry them. It's a load. Well, the city actually, they showed up that day with like 8 or 10 people who are a lot younger than most of our volunteers, and in basically about 2.5 hours, carried all those in and staked them out, and things weren't growing good in 2021. So the next slide, that's just a closer view. You can see there's, sparse vegetation that was mostly dead. It just wasn't growing very good. Well, the next slide, that's basically looking up from the bottom of the hill, and it's this solid sweet clover. You can just barely see a little bit of the wattles showing there. Next slide, that's just up closer where you can see the wattles. The sweet clovers really come on hard this year. But next slide shows lots of other vegetation types in there, and just a little bit of a flat spot, and it's helping. If we could get enough help to just do that whole hillside, it would largely cure it. So, it took a lot of years to get that way. We won't cure it in 1 year, but hopefully we'll get back there soon. Actually, the city, the first year, they hauled a bunch of dirt up there to topsoil one slope that we could get at it with a machine, and then since then, well, they just can't get time to come bring, they just bring a skid steer and let's do it. But we'll deal with that in the months to come. So the next slide, this just shows you from last year, same general vicinity. I mean, things were doing good last year. It's been a great year this year, obviously. So next slide, just a little farther to the right, and then next one a little farther to the right. Good things are happening there. So next slide takes us out to Raider Park, which is our latest endeavor, and we voted on all this, so to start a project I won't go through the details, but Tom Keck, who came to the meeting, is kind of the lead for them, and he's anxious to get stuff done, so we've been working in there. This figure is from our work plan, and so various erosive areas in there, and I just put a circle around that one so you can see it. The next slide, I just grabbed it from Google Earth here today, and this oval shows that had been seeded before we went to work in there, and so this was from June of 2022, about a year ago, and it's pretty similar to what it looks like now. So the areas that we've been working, kind of a main area, there's a trail there. It had been a four-wheeler. A lot of these trails that are in there are either hiking trails or cross-country trails. They're kind of intermixed, and most of them had been carved by off-roaders in there, but and a lot of them have been rehabilitated with the trails. Actually, Birkey's Runners Club donates money to them to do the trail work, and we're just doing erosion control. But there's a parking lot here. A lot of water's been running down that parking lot, or from the parking lot down that road and then on in there. So we spent part of a week there, and it was nice because you can get at it with equipment. So instead of sled, we had 2 bobcats and a dump trailer, and we hauled it in there, and we loaded it, hauled it, spread it, got some people to come and help with the seeding and the erosion control mats. So that was a big one, and then a lot of it was coming off the parking lot through this bare area. There's actually a big dirt pile here that doesn't show up, but we built a little sediment dam in there or a detention dam to to help hold the water back. Then this area was very bare, and we hauled dirt there and seeded. We put a very small detention dam there that's catching water coming off this parking lot. And then a few other little bald spots in there. And then if anyone's bored tomorrow morning, we're going to be working on a bit of trail in there for a couple hours. So the next slide then, this shows the detention dam up by the dirt pile. So it's kind of nice. I mean, we've got this unlimited supply of dirt there. You know, we actually hauled it right out through where the dam was, and then the last thing we did was built the dam. And it has a little different color. That's actually erosion control blanket on it. That's the final product. So the next slide is full of water. It's filled several times, and we kind of been talking. We might need to go back and put a little bit of a drain in there. And wouldn't be too hard to do, but I'm close enough. I can see the grass starting to grow up through that blanket, and everything we've done. Well, the next slide. This shows the little detention dam down below there, and so basically, kind of about like that was vegetation originally, but everything kind of up through there, that's what it's looking like after just a couple of months. So things are going really well there, and we'll keep doing more there.
Great.
Thank you.
Questions?
Yeah, when you showed LaCroix an improvement with the sweet clover, I think, is that due to the wattles by themselves, or I think you also said the city brought in some topsoil?
No, right, that dirt, their topsoil is just sitting there. It's never been spread. They've never come back to help us spread it. So it is entirely the combination of the wattles to make a little checkpoint and keep it from washing. Each one of them, it just doesn't wash clear down the hill. I've seeded it a couple of times, just scratched a little seed in just above them, but I really can't see a lot of growth from that. Most of it seems to be just native stuff that's coming up on its own. But just the wattles are holding it back, and it was all experimental. You know, how close together do you put them, and you know, by guess or by gosh, and seems to be working.
One thing about the Raider Park area is that you saw all those bare areas, and every time it rained, the water would come off those tennis court and the parking lots and would pick up sediment, and that sediment then would be carried to Lime Creek, which is just over there by the game fishing parks, the fire people and stuff like that. It goes into Lime Creek, and then it runs into Rapid Creek. So this is going to really minimize the amount of sediment coming off of that site right now. It's working. Anything else? Any questions for Dan? Yeah, tomorrow, as Dan said, tomorrow there's going to be a crowd out there doing a little more work, volunteer work, so 8 o'clock.
I might have some seed for you to use.
Sounds good.
Okay. It's a prairie grass.
All right.
You've got seed you don't need. We've got places
I don't
for
need
it.
it, so.
I got a couple things under my comments on the next item. The first one is, last Thursday I did attend we were wondering what was going on with the Bennington County Conservation District, because we authorized $50,000 over a 3-year period for some projects out there in Rapid Valley, and hadn't heard anything about it, so I went to their meeting and got put on the agenda to find out what's going on with that project. And so I went to the meeting, and the guy from the Department of Ag, USDA, was there, NRCS, Joel Milos, and he's kind of in charge of what's going on out there in the valley. And so they do have a contract out there with one of the property owners, and there's a stretch of Rapid Creek kind of down by the St. Germain ditch, irrigation ditch, that the banks have been eroding over the years because of high water and so forth. And so they do have a project for stabilizing that bank and putting in some water bars and that sort of thing. And they're planning on starting that this fall. So they will be requesting some money from us here shortly for that project.
Okay.
Because that was the question, is we haven't spent any money out there, but they do have a project. And then they got some other things they're working on too, so that's an update on that program that we're potentially going to be funding here. Now, the other item, I didn't get it on the agenda, but the South Dakota Water and Wastewater Association is an organization for mainly people that in water and wastewater municipalities, sanitary districts and so forth across the state. And they have an annual meeting that they change places every year, go to different communities and so forth. But next year it's going to be in Spearfish. Or excuse me, this September it's going to be in Spearfish. And I have gone to that conference several times, and I'd like to go again. So I was going to, we'll put it on the August agenda because that's time enough for me to fill out this application. But I would like to attend that conference this year. And I asked them the West Dakota if they would pay for my registration fee. I'm not planning on staying up there, and I don't want any mileage because I'll be going back and forth. But if you could pay for if the board could pay for my registration, I'd appreciate it. And so we could put that on the August agenda because I don't have time to fill this form out.
How much?
$150. Not a deal breaker. And I'm not going to bill the board for anything else for food or, well, there is some food involved with it. It's $150, but anyway, I'll put that on the agenda for next time. That's all I have. Any items from any of the other directors?
I'll just note for everybody that the legislature this year did make some change to the public meetings law as far as allowing public comment for, open meeting hearings that went into effect on July 1. And it just clarified the statute, and basically the old law said that public comment periods applied to official meetings of public boards and commissions like us. They changed that to, I guess it will apply to regularly scheduled official meetings. They took out regularly scheduled, so now public comment laws, open meeting laws apply both to our regular meetings and to any special meetings we would have, like the upcoming one for, water reviews if somebody wanted to add. But it also clarified that a board can put on reasonable regulations as to time and manner of comment. So if people get too unrowdy, you can shut them down and enforce discipline and decorum in the meeting. It just clarified that. I don't think the changes really are that great, but they did fool around with it a bit. Be aware of.
Okay, thank you.
So in the special meeting, we're going to have a public comment.
Public comment is permissible. I mean, you cannot not have it. The law now says that public body shall reserve at every official meeting a period for public comment. So that now applies not just to our regularly scheduled meetings, but to any special meetings that we might have.
And we got around that last time is we opened it up for public comment before we started the meeting. Like we did the roll of public comment and then nobody said anything and then we can conduct the meeting.
It also went on to clarify that those public comments periods can be limited at the public body's discretion as to time allowed for each topic and the time allowed for public comment. But not so limited as to prevent public comment.
Very good. Thank you. Any other directors?
I came across a new book.
Oh.
Met the author even. Running Out. And it's talking about In Search of Water in the High Plains. It's specifically southwestern Kansas and the depletion of the Oglala Aquifer. This is a fifth-generation resident down there that wrote this. He's an anthropologist with the University of Oklahoma. And it's a pretty good expose on just all the different social, economic, and other factors that lead to the depletion of Oglala Aquifer, and specifically in southwestern Kansas, but it was worth doing. The library has a copy of this.
What's the author's name?
Louis Bessire, Bessire. And that's my copy if somebody wants to borrow it, but the library does have one.
Okay. Anything else from the directors? If not, it's open to the public.
First.
What's that? Oh, yeah.
Okay.
We don't want to forget him.
Yeah.
We got him for another year.
Yeah, we're paying him now, so.
Sorry, I missed you. Go ahead.
Speaking of books,
Yeah?
there's a book by Elizabeth Custer, George Custer's wife, called Boots and Saddles, where she traveled through the Dakotas, and it talks a lot about the Missouri River before it was dammed, of course. But it's pretty interesting how wild that river was at the time.
Oh.
I have a first edition copy. It's worth a couple $1,000, so I'm not going to loan it. I talked to Sandra from Keystone. So originally, they were planning on having that bridge cleaned out in June. And I talked to her maybe a week and a half ago. They're waiting on 4 permits, and the bid has expired, so they have to redo the bid. So the bottom line is they hope to have that bridge clean out done this month. Cheryl added a frequently asked question to the website. Is that right?
Yeah, what did I do? I added a couple things. A photo of some irrigation stuff.
Do you remember where that's at?
No, I don't remember what I
there
did.
it is, FAQ. Oh, okay.
Something there, yeah.
So I don't know, maybe we want to put that link to the Ellsworth PFAS thing up there, so we can talk about that.
Oh, yeah.
That's a good idea.
Did you say that did you add that to the website, what she gave us today?
I added the presentation,
Okay,
so it's in that, but,
okay. Yeah, we'll talk about that. We can figure that out. And then I just added the one photo of the erosion. I added that under projects. And that one there.
Yeah.
Just talking about the, Raider Park.
Okay, so there's that stuff.
And there was something else. What else did I do?
Raider Park.
Oh, just change colors and stuff on things.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Now, any items from the public? We have 2 people from the public. Any items?
My name is Linda Hayward, and I live at 7860 Longview Road, which is that way. And while I was gone on vacation, and I come back and find out that my irrigation ditch, Hawthorne irrigation ditch, is plumb full of water. That ditch is a clean water ditch, not a water runoff ditch. And through some investigating and looking around, I have now found out that there's an area over in the valley area that a contractor busted through into that irrigation ditch for runoff water and stuff, which is where, as you guys probably all well know, the water comes from clear up Copperfield and everywhere up there, and then works its way down and comes all the way down, and of course goes over Longview Road like a waterfall there, and several waterfalls throughout the Murphy area there. And some of that water came on down to our ditch. I now have that irrigation ditch property rights to my place, which has quite a bit of frontage on it, and then down the other side. So I acquired those rights, and a lot of people along that Hawthorne ditch now have the rights to their property. Connex Lumber Company being one of them. Big D down there on 44, and they're going to shut off their ditch and use their property for their own business now instead of having the ditch going through their property, which is what a lot of other people have done. So I need to know where this is going to go. I want to find out if there is some type of investigation can be done between the water company here and the Rapid City Water Company or what can be done to solve the problems that we're having out in this area with water runoff, damaging water. Not only does that water just cause damage, I mean, it's anywhere it floods out like that, it contaminates all the wells from everybody all the way down Longview Road.
Are you talking about stormwater?
Yep. When stormwater comes. And my ditch, just where I live, it happens to be about 7 feet deep. And it was up to the brim. That's how much stormwater runoff. I have photos that were in that ditch while we were gone on vacation.
Are you in the county or are you in the city?
I'm the 3 mile limit.
You're in the 3 mile limit.
3 mile limit.
Well, as West Dakota Water Development District, we don't have any authority over stormwater as far as, you got the city of Rapid City, who has a stormwater management program, and so does this Pennington County. And so those would be the two organizations you should talk to.
Is there anything in your, where you have ability to work with them or whatever, to where they can do investigation and start a research situation as to what can be done to all the areas out here? It's not just mine. I mean, I can't imagine if I decided to fill in that ditch, it's just going to be taken out the highway then. So,
Have you talked with the county planning and zoning department?
Lots.
And, right, I mean, if my understanding is if you're within city limits, if runoff from your property is affecting your neighbor, city code enforcement can get involved, and I'm not sure what happens at the county level. I mean, actually, Dan Mullally had raised the question, regarding kind of drainage issues out in the valley. Could West Dakota become involved? And to me, it fits in with our erosion control, stormwater mitigation. I mean, we could become involved in projects to help resolve problems. A case where basically a developer has directed his runoff into your property, to me is a legal issue, and I don't know if you're next. Maybe you've talked with a lawyer already. I don't know what the legal ramifications are, but if there was a way we could help, I'm sure I'd be happy to talk with you, but on the side. But like Dan says, our board has basically no authority to do anything that I can think of that could assist.
We're not a regulatory agency at all. So, like Dan said, if there was a project out there that, like a stormwater detention facility, that, whoever is funding or trying to fund it or trying to build this, they can come to us and see if we can participate financially.
Well, I think the people that are causing some of the problems out here in this area have come to you, and that would be Skull Construction.
Have come to us?
Yeah, haven't they come to you?
No. No.
That sounds like a plan.
I would be happy to meet with you sometime and look at it and try to just brainstorm with you.
Yeah.
It's really the best that I could offer. So.
Well, my husband and I did team with some other people in the valley, and we did, got some of the the wetlands, we wanted those researched, and so it forced them to come back and do some research there, and we forced them to shut down their operation where they want to build Apple Valley out here because there's no infrastructure. But it will come. It will come. I mean, we've delayed it for a good year and a half maybe it's gonna go on 2 years now, but, it will come. But I'm at the end, where I'm at, I'm not at the end because the irrigation ditch continually goes down Hawthorne Ditch clear out into almost to Caputa. I mean, it goes way out and then it goes over and goes back into Rapid Creek. So again, this is Rapid Creek is clean water. So this coming through my ditch is going to eventually go back into clean water, Rapid Creek. So, but there, I thought I'd heard through the wind that there may be, some investigation where they would have to slow down these projects and do some actual research into investigating into getting repairs done all through the valley up here where it goes through and I mean, like I said, I've got photos I can show you where it's tearing stuff down all over the place where that water's coming through. So
Well, those
there
developers, I mean, they have to either work with the city or Rapid City if it's in the 3 mile limit, or at least within the 1 mile limit, and then they're dealing with the county, as Dan said. They would be the ones that would approve those development plans, which should address stormwater drainage.
Yeah, and they do approve them. It just goes right through. They don't get second thoughts about it.
Have you talked to the city?
Not much of a way to fight it.
Well, there's my phone number, and like I say, I'm happy to, I don't know what we can do in a meeting for you. I can come out and look at it and offer thoughts.
Okay.
Is Hawthorne Ditch an abandoned ditch?
Yeah,
yes, it is
yeah, it's
abandoned
abandoned now.
The city bought it, and then they shut it down. And when they shut it down, because the Rapid Creek water would come in there for irrigation during the summers, and when they shut it down, then it caused problems with all the wells. Almost everybody down Longview Road had problems with their wells. Well, Dan can attest to that. His well is one of them.
Anyhow, tomorrow's a bad day for me. Call me Thursday or Friday or something. But
Okay. All right.
Well, Mr. Chair, I had a question. So you said Connects, are they planning on filling that ditch in? Do you know?
Yes, they are.
Okay, so.
Yes, they have full plans of taking that ditch out all the way through their property.
Yeah, it's interesting, that ditch connects several drainage basins.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does.
How can they take it out?
Because they now own the property and the ditch has been shut down and disposed of.
they abandoned the water rights. The ditch
Oh, I
company
see.
disappeared and reverts to landowners.
Okay.
And
Well, I would say the city probably has the water rights.
So I went and got my rights
I
too,
think they
to the
would
ditch, so that if somebody wants to come down that road and do something, I can say, you got up to here, the rest of this is my property, so.
I don't either, that's a legal problem. Yeah. But I believe the city ended up getting all those water rights on the Hawthorne ditch, so.
Well, they basically don't have any rights anymore
Yeah,
because they abandoned it.
they abandoned the ditch, but the water rights, is my understanding, I don't know for sure, but what I heard is that the city has those water rights for the Hawthorne ditch now.
For dirty water?
For water, yeah. So what they do, and I know because I used to be the head of the water department in Rapid City, we were purchasing water rights from irrigators, and then we were transferring the diversion points to the city's diversion points for their municipal water. So they changed the diversion points, so they're taking the water upstream of where the Hawthorne intake was.
it's a very junior water right.
It's junior now.
Probably won't ever really come into play.
Well, it might, but
It might.
it would be very seldom, because of their water rights, their senior water rights too high up on the list. I should say, too far down on the list. There's other ones that are more senior, like the Murphy Ditch and the South
The
Side
Murphy Ditch is still up and valid and running. Murphy Ditch runs year-round, where Hawthorne Ditch was only summertime, for irrigation, basically.
Right. Anyway, wish we could help you, but we're not a regulatory agency.
Okay.
But thanks for coming. Did you have something?
No, just
Nothing.
observer.
Just observe. Well, that's good. Did you sign in by a chance?
No, I did not.
There's a sign-up sheet right there. If you could do that, that way we know who you are. All right, meeting adjourned. Thanks for coming, everybody.
Good luck, everybody.
Well, I have to move quickly to meet my wife, so.
Where are you going?
To the postmortem.